Pope Francis embarks on an apostolic visit in Indonesia this week, the longest voyage of his pontificate at 12 days. He hopes to encourage the small Catholic community there, very small, to promote interfaith harmony and dialogue in a country where the world's largest Muslim population dominates. Meanwhile, the former Vatican spokesman, or a former Vatican spokesman, faces charges of sexual abuse. With analysis of all this and more is the Papal Posse. Editor-in-Chief of thecatholicthing.org, Robert Royal, and canon lawyer and priest of the Archdiocese of New York, Father Gerald Murray. Thank you both for being here. Gents, I want to start with the Pope's trip to Indonesia and Oceania. This is a tiny Catholic population, only 3% of 275 million people. Arriving in Jakarta on Tuesday, Pope Francis met with Indonesian authorities in the morning, later with priests, nuns, and seminarians at Jakarta's Our Lady of the Assumption Cathedral. In his prepared remarks, the Pope celebrated Indonesia's human diversity as, quote, a magnificent mosaic, while at the same time warning that diversity can sometimes lead to conflict. Father Jerry, the Pope made a point of assuring the Indonesian president that the Church is committed to interreligious dialogue. Your thoughts about that sentiment and the necessity of this trip now?
Well, the trip is good for those Catholics in that part of the world precisely because of the increasing pressure that's being felt in other parts of the Muslim world. Particularly in Nigeria, for existence, where the Catholic Church is being persecuted. To have an Indonesian government receive them, the Pope so warmly, and the Pope encouraging dialogue between religions, this is all to the good, because the model of tolerance in Indonesia should be followed by other Islamic countries. And certainly the Catholic population there, while small, is influential. And the Catholic Church, wherever it established itself, is always appreciated by all people because of its educational, hospital, social welfare efforts, all that it does to promote human development according to the Christian faith. So there's no necessary conflict between Islam and Christianity when both sides agree that we are going to respectfully disagree about doctrine, but on the other hand, embrace human love and what God commands us to do, love our neighbor.
Yeah. John Allen, Bob, said this week, this is no longer the periphery, a place like Indonesia. He claims we in the West are the periphery. There are literally 3% Catholics there. I mean, come on. Is this stretching the point a bit?
Well, yeah, in a way, yes, it is. But on the other hand, this is kind of a shrewd move. John Paul II visited Indonesia too during his papacy, and that part of the world, it's long been said that outside of the Middle East and primarily the Gulf area, the Muslims in Southeast Asia and in the East generally tend to be less radical than the people that we hear the most about because they produce the most trouble in Africa and in the Middle East. So to go there and to talk about the possibility of a harmonious coexistence, at least tolerance of one another, I think that that's all to the good. We all get a little nervous about this kind of conversation because it can, at least certain people can read this as the Church being a bit submissive toward Islam. And of course, we're telling them about tolerance because it's mostly Islam that's persecuting Christians. It's not Christians perpetrating violence against Muslims. But I think overall to go there and to have a willing dialogue partner who's probably about as sincere a dialogue partner for peaceful coexistence as you can find in the Muslim world, that's not bad at all. I don't believe that the West is the peripheries in terms of Christianity. I think we still have some fight left in us, but I'm glad that he's gone and brought the message. When he's spoken to Christians there, he actually talked to them about taking risks for Christ and to listen to the one voice that can save us, and that is Jesus. So that, too, is to the good.
Father, earlier this week, the Pope offered a final prayer at an interfaith meeting with young people. There was some reportage and disgruntlement that he did not make the sign of the cross, did not mention Jesus Christ, and he said, quote, "We are from different religions, but we have only one God." the people, a lot of folks online are saying he missed the opportunity to bear witness to the faith. Your take?
Well, the Pope did this before. Remember his first meeting with journalists after his election? He said, since there are non-believers here, I'm not going to give a blessing. I'm just going to hope that God helps you. It's a gesture that I wouldn't do that, because I think Muslims and non-believers expect the Christian Pope, the Catholic Pope, to do what he does all the time, which is to make the sign of the cross over the people, invoke God's blessing. So, but on the other hand, you know, the sentiment the Pope is trying to convey to those people is that he loves them and appreciates them. And I would say that's good, but blessing them is a further sign of that. It's not a sign of anything else. So to love and show people respect includes bringing Christ's blessing upon them.
Yeah. This dialogue with Islam was something that John Paul, later Pope Benedict, really tried to initiate and move forward. And on Thursday, Pope Francis met with Jakarta's Grand Imam outside a mosque. Together, they vowed to stand against fundamentalism and protect the environment. They issued a joint statement calling for interfaith harmony and common cause. Bob, this mosque is very near the Church of the Assumption Cathedral, and the two structures are connected by what they call a tunnel of friendship. It's a passageway underneath. What do you make of that joint declaration, which has become a central theme of France's interfaith outreach?
Well, you know, scholars tend to debate the exact status of what Islam is to Christianity, because, you know, when we look at Judaism, Judaism is the religion out of which Christianity comes. Jesus says, I haven't come to abolish the law, I've come to fulfill it. So we have a kind of a common heritage with the Jews. Islam is on the other side of things. It is kind of rejection of Christianity. It talks about Jesus being a prophet. It honors Mary in some places that I've encountered when I've been in Islamic countries. But it's a different kind of friendship. And I think we all feel a little bit of nervousness about this, nervousness about the theological status of it, and also because there has been so much recent violence perpetrated by Muslims. So, look, insofar as this is a step in, again, to say this tolerance, this live and let live attitude, that's a good thing at that level. But I think we know that there are other things that are going on, and if we can reproduce that type of connection between people of goodwill, then fine. But I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that there are also other factors involved in Islam these days, as well as the theological, just social conflicts that it's going to take a lot more than some dialogue to resolve.
Father, what do you make of the fact that the Pope often leads these interreligious conversations with the environment, or the shared, you know, this idea of a shared humanity? That, as we said earlier, makes people a little nervous.
Well, the mission of the church is not, in the first place, to protect the environment. I mean, that is a derivative aspect of caring for creation. But remember, this world is passing. Our home is in heaven. The world to come will be the fulfillment of all human hope, and the life of heaven has to be the focus. So the other point, of course, is when you talk about environmentalism, it's not like there's one doctrine which says you have to do this in order to please God. You know, people who are against development will say, well, we can't tear down the forest and plant crops because it destroys the forest. And the other people say, wait a minute, if we don't plant crops, people are going to die. So that's where you get into the political debates about priorities and which things government should favor. So we all want a clean environment. The question is, do we want it imposed at the cost of socialism and government control? And certainly the church teaches that freedom and individual responsibility of citizens comes before government control.
Yeah. Father, I want to move on. Former Vatican spokesman, director of Toronto's World Youth Day in 2002, Father Thomas Rosica, has been charged with the sexual abuse of a priest, and the lawsuit was filed in March. The plaintiff, a yet unnamed priest from Canada, alleges that Father Rosica abused him while making preparations for World Youth Day. Father Jerry, I'll start with you on this because it's a canonical question. Rosica's denying any improper conduct, and he is, the Canadian court has yet to rule on the suit. But Rosica's asking that the case be dismissed and that a church canonical review be allowed to proceed. Is that sufficient here?
Well, this is a civil suit, so it's alleging harm perpetrated by one individual on another. And it certainly should go forward because the man who files the claim has evidence and has presented a case and will argue it in court. The canonical case would be to examine whether he is guilty of violating any canon law, particularly as regards vows of chastity or celibacy, whether he made use of, his influence as a priest to have, a position of imposing himself on this other person. So, a canonical process is completely separate. It doesn't depend on what happens in the civil process. So it should go ahead civilly, and then I hope his religious superiors are taking the steps for a canonical investigation, because if it's true that he committed sexual abuse against, I think this man was a priest or seminarian at the time, then this definitely has to be examined.
Bob, Father Rosica was previously involved in a plagiarism scandal that he admitted to in 2018. He became a Vatican spokesman earlier in 2013, was a media advisor at 2 synods of bishops. Your reaction to this story, Bob, and the allegations presented here?
Yeah, I think that this is very, very sad. Father Rosica was really a celebrity priest. I've actually talked with some priests who knew him in the early 2000s, and he was called upon by very, very orthodox orders of nuns. He gave beautiful retreats. Everyone was happy with him, and it's about the same time that this alleged abuse took place. I'm sorry to see this. I don't know if we have to let the process play out. It's only fair to let there be witnesses presented and evidence examined. But I'm not entirely surprised at what happened, and it was probably wise on the Vatican's part that they removed him from a sensitive position on those synods when these sorts of things started to surface.
While we're talking of the synod, the upcoming synod on synodality is reconvening in October in Rome next month. There is an ongoing, gentlemen, Amazon synod, which met just weeks ago, which I'll bet most of our viewers probably never heard anything of. They discussed greater participation of women, as well as a, quote, Amazonian rite, and how that could be celebrated, a liturgical rite. Reports surfaced this week that the Amazon rite of Mass will enter a 3-year experimental phase later this year, inspired and infused by local traditions and customs. Father, what have you heard about this new experimental rite? And when can we expect the Tridentine experimental rite? I can't wait.
Well, of course, this is the big question mark that hangs over this entire matter. We were told when the traditional Latin Mass was being put aside by the Holy See that there is only one expression of the Roman Rite, which is the Novus Ordo.
Right.
Well, that wasn't true then. It's not true now. We have the Anglican use. The Tridentine Mass absolutely is an expression of the Roman Rite. It's very ancient. But now the Holy See, which says the Tridentine Mass is not an expression of the Roman Rite, now they're saying the Amazonian Rite will be a variant of the Roman Rite. And what will the variations be? Undoubtedly, based on what I've seen and the history of it, it'll be the incorporation of pagan ritual elements, which somehow will pay homage to the previous religion of Christians in the Amazon, their ancestors' religions. But this is wrong. We do not incorporate paganism into the Catholic Mass to try and show appreciation for something that we reject, which is we don't believe in pagan gods. We don't believe in pagan rituals. The mission of the Church is to preach Christ, not to embrace the errors of paganism and to pretend that somehow this is an act of respect. This is actually, it's a little bit like sociology being used as a tool to say to people, well, we hope you feel good because your ancestors did this and now we're going to resurrect it. And then the people who are serious and very devout Catholics say, well, wait a minute. I'm glad my ancestors rejected that. We believe in Jesus. Yeah. We're happy that God sent the missionaries to us. That's certainly. I'm Irish. I'm glad we don't do what the Irish did when they were pagans. We worship God now.
Yeah. Well, this would be like having, a Zeus interlude in a Roman church. I mean, we don't do that. We don't need a Pachamama Rama here. But, Bob, reports have noted that this new Amazonian rite might be similar to the Zaire rite in use in the Congo since 1988. How much enculturation can the Roman Catholic Mass bear and still remain a Catholic Mass? I'll ask both of you that.
Well, look, I think that the question of enculturation is an interesting one, and there is St. John Paul II actually said that a faith that does not become a culture is not really a living faith in a place. So there is room for adaptation. But as you rightly suggested, Raymond, what we saw during the Amazonian Synod was Pachamama. And then when that controversy erupted over it, we saw the Pope actually put a plant that was associated with the pagan gods on the altar at St. Peter's. Now, we keep hearing, as this new Amazonian rite is being discussed, that it's about things like using a ceramic bowl rather than a censer, for incense during a Mass, and other things that are already being used in the Amazon. And so it's being presented as if it's just a kind of a minor nod to certain things that existed there already. But I have to say that I'm a little bit worried. The Amazonian Synod kind of left things up in the air about women, and it left things up in the air about the viri probati and about this rite. And so I'm a little bit worried that kind of more radical acceptance that Father was talking about these pagan elements, has not entirely been exorcised from this whole process, and we'll have to see where it goes.
Okay, let's quickly talk about the aforementioned Synod on Synodality. I've got a minute. It starts in October. The working document calls for 10 working groups set up by the Pope. Once again, the role of women will be a central topic of discussion, as well as, quote, transparency and accountability. Father, very quickly, this notion of a female diaconate is once again up for discussion. Former Irish Prime Minister Mary McAleese accuses the Pope of undermining the Synod on Synodality by supposedly downplaying the role of women in decision-making and by upholding the ban on ordination of women. Do you see the Pope as an obstacle to ordaining women? I mean, if anything, hasn't he kept the door open?
Well, he told CBS News no to women deacons, and he's also said no to women priests. But if that's the case, why is this stuff still on the agenda? So now Mary McAleese is an agent of change. She wants to radicalize the Catholic Church, so she's using this opportunity to try and poke the Pope in the ribs and say, get with it. The Synod, though, is a shadow synod because all the significant discussion was placed in those 10 groups you mentioned. Well, those are experts. Those aren't synodal members. And they're going to report to the Synod and tell, an interim report of what they're doing. But their report is coming next June at the earliest. So this Synod is essentially going to be like a parliament where you invite civilians in to listen to the experts, and then they walk out. They don't have any real power. The experts have all the power. So I'm saying to myself, the Synod started as the expression of the people of God coming together with the pastors, and in the end, it's going to be like most European bureaucracies. The experts will produce a piece of paper, tell us to sign it, and then to be happy.
Bob, what do you think the Synod means when it talks about transparency and accountability? I mean, all this seems very vague. I guess Vatican diplomacy is immune from this, given the Vatican-China Accord, which still remains a secret and less than transparent. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, look, I think Mary McAleese is expressing something that we worried about, years ago as this whole process began, and that is there was a sort of invitation for people who are on the progressive side to lobby the church on issues that have been examined and decided over and over again in favor of the tradition. So maybe this was a way that the Holy Father thought he could bring both wings of the church together, and there would be a discussion and people would at least come to respect one another. But what it did is it did give the impression, I think, to not only her but to lots of other people, that everything was up for grabs. And little by little it became clear that it wasn't, that there wouldn't be women deacons and there wouldn't be this valuing, so to speak, of homosexual relationships, although we're going to see when those 10 study groups. It's interesting that we've had we will have had 2 month-long sessions, and we're still going to need 10 study groups to deal with some of the hot button issues and a lot of sort of inside Catholicism, structural, institutional stuff. So it's a confused situation, but it did give. Insofar as there was transparency, it did give people the impression that everything was up for grabs, and now we'll see where it all cashes out.
Gentlemen, we will leave it there for commentary by Robert Royal and Father Gerald Murray. You can go to thecatholicthing.org. Thank you, gents.